This story happened around 4 years ago, when I was 15 years old and we moved into this house. Sorry about grammar and stuff. Me no good at it. Backstory. We lived in a small tourist town. School K through 12 in one building, and population of 700. Not during tourist season, kind of small. There was this weird druggie that everyone knew and hated. He lived in one of his parents' houses and didn't pay rent, so they decided to kick him out. My parents were friends with the family, and helped take care of his kids when he couldn't, so we were on pretty good terms. They gave the druggie, I'll call him just D for short, 30 days to move out for failing to pay a small rent check in his miserable life. We weren't doing very well at all financially, and needed somewhere to stay or rent. We began talking to D's parents about the house, and they said we could begin renting to buy soon as he moved out. The 30-day mark came around, and we asked D if he was ready, and he acted like he knew nothing about what we were talking about. His parents said they were going to give him some extra days and help him move his stuff, so we waited another month. At this point, the current place we were staying, we had to move out in a few days. We went to the house and went inside to see all of D's stuff still there. We decided we couldn't wait and just bagged his stuff up and told him to pick it up. Fast forward about a year. We always heard scurrying like mice and stuff in the ceiling. We had a ton of strange animals like mice, snakes, lizards, chinchillas, etc. One of our 4 snakes went missing from its closed tank, with clips holding down the lid. There were no holes anywhere to be found. We didn't think anything of it, but it was a bit strange. Eventually we started hearing louder sounds, and our dad said it was just the house settling. Stuff was disappearing from the fridge. Electrical bill went up. We smelled smoke, etc. Us kids got blamed for it all, and got our phones and my PC taken away. But the power bill was still up. And I also got blamed for smoking in the house, which my parents had no reason to believe or promote this accusation. So I got grounded until graduation. I was mad now because I did not smoke in our house. I was unbelievably bored one day, not being able to do anything, so I decided to explore our attic. I opened the door. Holy shit. My mom then came up the ladder ready to beat me, and saw it too. A bed, microwave, mini fridge, cigarettes, unsmoked blunts, etc. Guess who? It's Druggy. He then came back that night, through my little sister's window. He was higher than I'd ever seen a person, and admitted to a bunch of stuff, and we recorded. He took the snake and let it loose to get rid of the mice. He smoked in our house. He snuck in through my little sister's room every night. In court, he then admitted to making a small hole in the floor of the attic, to which my little 11-year-old sister slept at night. We changed all locks, got a Ring doorbell, placed higher security locks on all windows, and more. And the worst part of all, this creep only got 6 months probation for marijuana possession, which wasn't yet legal in my state. He got only 1 year of prison for breaking and entering for an entire year, almost every day. What kind of bullshit system is that? He did have to pay a pretty heavy fine for damages and had to pay us back a year's worth of our electric bill. We are now out of debt and my parents are living steadily, because he finally finished paying all the fines to us. My sister has to go to a therapist twice a week, and might never get a good night to sleep again.
A kid can't resist where they are told they shouldn't be. Growing up, I frequently played on the gravel road near our house. Daddy told me time and again to stay away from the dilapidated barn down at the end of that road. He claimed it was a heaven for snakes, spiders, splinters, and all other ungodly things. It would take more than creepy crawlies and a case of lockjaw to eliminate my intrigue. Daddy's forbiddance just made it more enticing adventure. One morning I was walking along that gravel road and I saw a boy around my age I would never seen before. Didn't recognize him from school, but I did the polite thing and waved at him. He waved back and added a sly smile to his greeting. "Come on," he yelled and motioned for me to follow him. I didn't get a lot of opportunities to play with kids where I lived. We were so far away from any true neighbors, so I followed him around a bend in the road. There was no sign of my new friend, but there was that old rotten barn standing straight ahead. For once, its doors were wide open. That was definitely interesting, considering the doors were always boarded shut, but I was more concerned where that boy ran off to. "Come on," I heard from the heart of the barn's darkness. "How would you get all the way down there so fast, buddy?" I asked, thinking the situation was more funny than extremely odd. The boy peeked his head out from behind the barn's open door frame. "Come on," he yelled in that same cheerful tone. I was making my way toward the barn when I saw more kids' heads poking out from behind the doorway. I halted. "Come on," they all urged in unions. "Come on," they all urged in unison. They were all smiling and giggling at me. I shook my head and didn't take a single step forward. That barn looked, I don't know, hungry is about the best way to describe it, with its black mouth gaped wide open. The kids' smiles turned to frowns, and the droll giggles were replaced with hateful screams. And then one by one their heads fell to the ground and rolled to the center of the barn's doorway, making a sinister little peal of gore. The door slammed closed and opened several times, making a loud clacking sound I can hear vividly as I type this. Lights flashed as if a small lightning storm was going on inside. I saw a quick flash of a figure standing in the center of the doors, holding a movie sigh. I couldn't run away fast enough. I ran like the devil was on my heels, because I believe he was. When I got home, I was out of breath, and I saw my daddy on the porch smoking his pipe. He took one look at me and smirked. I could tell he knew where I would been. "Ungodly things in that barn. You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded with my mouth slacked open. That was all Rex's property. He took a couple puffs from his pipe. He loved children, in the worst possible way, if you get me. He hanged himself when the sheriff and his deputies finally figured him out and were banging on the doors of that barn. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm telling you now, so we can never talk about it again. I didn't push it. But I had a granddaddy I never met named Rex that died before I was born. Daddy never talked about him either."
To give you a little backstory, I have a nervous tic, where I laugh at the most awkward and inappropriate moments. I've always said that I would probably laugh, even if someone was causing me physical harm. Now to the actual story. My family and I own a small business in a not-so-great part of town. One day I was just eating a sandwich and watching The Young and Restless, as I did every day with a coworker. Also, we're the only two there at the time. I look up and saw a figure peering through our display window, but I assumed they were checking out the awesome display my mom had put in there, because sometimes people came in to see what creative displays she had come up with that season. They suddenly opened the door and shut it, and I thought, that's odd. So I stand up and see what's going on. That's when I see a tall figure with a full-face banana mask, and only his eyes and mouth out. He comes through the door and demands us to give him the money. Naturally, I freak out, but I have always been told to just give them what they want, and don't protest to it, which is what I had planned on doing. Next thing I know, my coworker stands up and says run, as she's running towards the back. So I was like, okay, and I ran too. I went through the back door assuming she was right behind me. And I get all the way to the back of the driveway, and I turn around and see that she's not there. So I start panicking like, where is she? I'm just standing there like a dumbass because I honestly don't even know what to do at this point. And I'm still trying to process what the hell just happened. I start walking down to the bank on the road beside us to tell them to call the cops, since I left my cell phone inside. Then I hear a deep-voiced man say, "Take me to the money," in a hateful tone. I turn around and there is the man pointing a gun at me. So I just say okay, while freaking out obviously, and I go with him. And then I start laughing, like some kind of crazy person, and he gets agitated. He then yells at me to walk faster with the gun pointed at my back. So I tell him I'm sorry, which why the hell should I be sorry? So I give him the whole $50 we had in our register, and he takes me to the back and tells me to stand there and count to 20. So I do what he says and then yell for my coworker, trying to figure out where the hell she went. Like, did they have her or what? No worries though, she was safe hiding in the bathroom. The cops never found out who did it, but they didn't actually seem too concerned, since he only got $50. Never mind the fact that someone had to go through a traumatic experience. Also, a side note, I posted on Facebook that I would probably say I'm sorry to someone, even if they were trying to rob me 2 days before this happened. Luckily, this was a while ago, and I have less anxiety about it than I used to. Although, all these people wearing these bandana masks due to COVID put me on edge lately. So to the robber who held a gun at me for $50, let's not meet again.
When I was in high school, I was close with my English teacher. I'll call her Mrs. H. I didn't have the best home life, so this teacher acted like a mentor figure in my life. I would spend a lot of free time in her class reading and telling stories. October during my junior year, I had been reading horror stories for weeks. By the time Halloween came around, I had read all I could stand and was itching for a good story. When I expressed this to my teacher, she offered to tell me one. It was well known in my school that my teacher was superstitious. She had many stories that she would tell if you asked. So I took her up on her offer. From this point on, I will write the story in first person. This is what she told me. Ever since I was little, I could feel supernatural things. Stuff like ghosts, hexes, and things like that. My entire family were also superstitious. So when I started saying things like, I see something or I feel something, they wouldn't dismiss it. Most people will dismiss supernatural things they hear and see. So when I grew up, I still had the ability to see and hear stuff. When I got into college, I joined one of the most popular sororities. I was close with most of the girls there and we were great friends. Every year, when we got pledges, we would decide who would join by anonymous vote. This particular year, we had an influx of pledges. We knew we would only have enough room for about 2 or 3. One of these pledges stood out. Her name was Anna. She was charming and a social butterfly. By the end of Rush, she had won over all of the other sorority sisters and was a top contender to join. However, I couldn't bring myself to like her. There was this off energy about her and it made my blood run cold. I guess she could sense this because at some point she started to focus her energy on me. She would try to give me food or offer to carry stuff for me. Despite her sweet personality, there was something cold about her. When the sisters and I talked about pledges, I expressed my fears. Although they didn't understand why, they respected my no and we went with other pledges. After a week, we announced the pledges who would join us. After that, Anna pretty much disappeared. It was like she dropped off the face of the earth. I went on with my business and didn't think much of it. I began to focus on my swim team. I was captain, so I had responsibilities. I began to schedule extra practices. One day, I scheduled a late night swim meet. When I got there, no one had arrived. I sent out another message to remind them, but decided to just get started without them. I got dressed and hit the pool. The entire time I had a bad, queasy feeling. I thought that it was because it was at night and I was alone, but when I climbed up on the diving board, it got worse. Looking down at the water, I could tell that if I dive into the water, I wouldn't be able to come back. It felt like a primal fear of death. I decided to call one of the swim team members I trusted. When I got a hold of them, I asked why they were late and they were confused. I asked them about the call, to which they said, "What call?" I began to feel sick. Something was not right. I don't know what I was looking for, but I started searching around the pool for something off. I was looking for a broken pipe or chemicals. I was searching for a justification for me to be upset, and I found it. Right by the pool was a closet where we put things like pool lane dividers and floaties. Inside, I found candles, lemons, nails, all things used in deadly black magic hexes. To this day, I can't prove that Anna did it, but I know it was her. I can feel it.
This happened years ago when I was about 17. I'm 30 now, male for context. When I was a teenager, I lived in Marin County, a quiet suburb just north of San Francisco. However, most of my buddies lived in San Francisco, and most nights of the week I would be found riding my bicycle back and forth across the Golden Gate Bridge. I enjoyed those long bike rides at night. I'd often be high as a kite, iPod on my favorite playlist, passing by weirdos and street urchins, or admiring the desolate beauty of the bay. Sausalito and empty Embarcadero. One of my favorite places to ride my bike was through the Presidio. The Presidio is the last neighborhood you pass in San Francisco before making your way onto the Golden Gate Bridge. It's famous for its old, beautiful military housing, an old airfield and hangars that have been converted into a seaside park, and an enormous eucalyptus tree and forest. At nighttime, it's dead quiet, and the only people you see out are late-night Chinese fishermen on the pier down on the water, or people flying down the freeway into the city. Anyways, this night I was coming back from hanging around with some friends, and riding my bike through the Presidio on my way home. I was leisurely gliding down the hill when I noticed a small older black car, something like an Oldsmobile coming up the road, perpendicular to the one I was coming down. As I got closer, the black Oldsmobile took a left, blinding me for a moment with its lights as it passed. I didn't think too much of it at the time. Here and there you might see a couple cruising to get out and make out by the bridge, or a car full of kids going to smoke a joint at the old pet cemetery beneath the highway overpass. A few minutes later, I had mostly climbed the hill that took you closer to the entrance of the bridge and looked down on Chrissy Field. This road is dark with barely any lights, and I was enjoying looking down towards the water to my right when I heard a car coming from behind me. I looked behind me and saw the same Oldsmobile, maybe 20 yards behind me with its lights off, strangely driving at a slow crawl. I tried to wave them past, but the car just kept on rolling slowly behind me. It was too dark to see who might have been driving. The fact that the car had its lights off had almost immediately struck me as a red flag, as well as its obviously slow trail behind me. I gave it a few more yards and tried to wave it again, but nothing. Spooked, I made a sharp left on my bicycle and began bombing down the hill in the opposite direction of the Oldsmobile. This route would take me back deeper into a more secluded wooded area by the cemetery and air hangars. For a moment I felt relieved until I heard a screech in the car wheels and glanced behind me to see that the black Oldsmobile lights still off, now passing behind trees coming down the same hill as me. The Oldsmobile had to have made an extremely unusual U-turn, especially considering how narrow the roads are in Presidio. Terrified now, I began pedaling faster away from the Oldsmobile. But as I picked up pace, so did the Oldsmobile, and it was quickly gaining my tail. Using all my strength, I pedaled as fast as I could, up the small hill and jumped off my bike, throwing it off the edge of the road and to the left into some bushes, and quickly jumped off the road to hide. Hanging off the side of a hill, hidden in ivy, I was just below the road. I looked up, but I couldn't see anything, but I could hear the Oldsmobile pass. I waited, and a few minutes later I heard the car slowly approaching. No indication from headlights, and then passed by, and again, and again, and again. For nearly 20 minutes or so, I hid in the bushes as I heard the Oldsmobile pass back and forth overhead. Finally, I mustered up the courage to get back on my bicycle, and ride as fast as I could possibly back to the bridge. In the darkness, listening to myself pant. It felt like forever, but finally I could see the glaring bright lights of the Golden Gate Bridge. But then, again I heard the car. I looked behind me to see the Oldsmobile again trailing me. I fucking smashed and made into the parking lot of the bridge toll. Rode up to the pedestrian sidewalk next to the toll and got off my bike, under the light, and chain smoked for a while. I never saw the car pass into the bridge, nor did I see it again once I made it to Marin.
I first read about the elevator ritual from some guy on Reddit. I don't know if he really experienced what he said he did or just made up the whole story, but it made me interested in the subject. I saw a bunch of YouTube videos of people playing it without any success, and I wanted to try it out myself. I live in an apartment in a 14-story building since a couple of months back. Yesterday I didn't have anyone to hang out with, so I decided that I should try this out to see if this really works. I entered the elevator on the first floor like the instructions said. I pressed the button for the 4th floor and felt entirely convinced that nothing strange or out of the ordinary would happen. A couple of seconds went by. I was on the 4th floor and pressed the button for the 2nd floor. At this point, I suddenly felt a lot more creeped out. It was almost as if something was warning me to not proceed. And thinking back now, after everything that has happened, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I pressed the buttons in the order that the instructions said. Right before I pressed the button for the 5th floor, where the woman was supposed to get on, I swear I heard a woman laughing in a creepy way somewhere outside the elevator. It could have been just an ordinary person and my brain making it sound a lot scarier, but that was what I heard. I pressed the button for the 5th floor and waited nervously for what felt like half a minute. I know that I shouldn't even looked out the door at that point, but I did. And I was shocked. In front of me was this famous, decayed Hollywood actress that I have had a crush on since I was a teenager. She just looked at me with a warm smile and entered the elevator without taking her eyes off me. I was completely flabbergasted and even forgot about the game for a moment. She was wearing a vintage-looking dark blue skirt suit and white gloves. Her long brown hair was tied neatly in a bun and her long slim legs looked just as good as in the movies. Her face looked just as pretty as ever and she had the same appearance as she did in the late 50s or early 60s, I think. I even thought about saying something before I looked in the mirror behind her. Her clothes were molding, and her legs and her neck had a greenish-looking tone with scars covering them. The little handbag she was carrying looked tattered, as if it hadn't been used for decades. I turned away and pressed the button for the first floor. Just as the instructions said, the elevator started ascending to the 10th floor instead of going down to the first one. She asked me where I was going, and I tried ignoring her. The doors opened at the 10th floor, and I exited the elevator without turning back. The first thing I noticed was that this hallway was a lot darker than the other ones. I looked out the window and noticed that it was nighttime. When I entered the elevator a couple of minutes before that, it was 3 p.m. and completely light outside. I saw a small red cross on top of one of the buildings, just as the instructions said. I didn't see any people or any lights. Everything was covered in some kind of mist, and I couldn't see my legs or feet because of it. Thinking that this was enough and that I should go back, I turned around and noticed that the doors to the elevator were still open and that the lights were on. I heard a fan giggle coming from over there. For a moment, I thought that I had no escape, but I decided that I should get on the elevator from another floor. I hurried up the stairs in complete darkness, while having the terrible feeling of someone or something chasing me from behind. I tripped over the stairs when I reached the 11th floor and probably hit my head on a wall. I think I passed out, but the thing is, I woke up on the bed in my apartment. Everything seemed normal. I looked out the window and the sun was shining. People were walking down the street and someone was talking in the apartment next to mine. I knew that I hadn't dreamed the whole thing and that I didn't end the ritual. I was too exhausted and creeped out to do anything though, so I just decided to take a nap and skip the morning lecture. Never in my 20 years of life had I experienced anything like that before. I woke up 2 hours later when my friend texted me, "Where are you?" I told him that I overslept and that I'm on my way. I took a shower and thought about having breakfast, but I wasn't hungry. I left my apartment and immediately noticed an out-of-service sign hanging on the elevator. That wasn't the only thing that was out of the ordinary. Every person, and I mean every single one passing by me, smiled at me. At first I thought they were unusually nice and polite, but I was soon under the impression that something was very wrong. I got a message from my friend, which simply was this following smiley. I hurried back to my apartment, locked the door and wrote all of this. I don't know if anyone is reading this, but if you do, please help me.
Me and my friend Alex went hiking in Okanagan. He met this girl on the internet on a website called Nexopia. So I went with him just in case this girl turned out to be a guy. So me and Alex made it there to this town and we phoned the girl. She ended up turning out to be a girl and she brought a friend with her. After hanging out with them for 2 days, we then parted away from them. When we were on our way back home, we got picked up by the police. And then they questioned us about how we knew them, and where did we meet them. And like the whole time we were with the 2 girls, they kept looking over their shoulders when a car passed by, and when a cop drove by, they would bury themselves into me and Alex, and I noticed something weird about them, but not sure what it was until the next day. When we were picked up by the police, we were walked away from the girls. I looked back while the cops were putting us into the back of the cruiser. The 2 girls ran away very fast. Turns out the 2 girls escaped from a mental hospital, and they were sent there for hurting someone. And they both got out of a psych ward, prison, of January 14th, 2020. So me and my friend go and decide to hit up a local McDonald's at 11 p.m. for some McFlurries, and while we were there, we both seen this crazy looking guy in there talking to himself with a cup of coffee from McDonald's. He kept going in and out talking to himself. Kept saying that this is the train station, and he had 2 duffel bags, so on the 10th time, he went outside. And I should also add that me and my friend are 2 guys, and so the staff on shift were all young females, and 2 of them came up to us, asking if we could stay inside with them. When we were done with our McMuffins, we got up to leave, and the 2 coworkers came back and said that they would give me and my friend Logan a free mega meal, like 2 Big Mac meals each and fries, if we stayed in, so we agreed, cause that guy crept them out so much, and I told Logan to lock the other side of the McDonald's doors, and I locked the doors where the train station guy kept on, where he kept walking back and forth near the dumpsters. So, I still have one of the female workers with me. They say I should look in the 2 duffel bags inside. It was a bunch of Tech 9s, submachine guns, 3 handguns, and some duct tape. And handcuffs in one of the bags was more guns and a bunch of drugs. So we make a phone call to the RCMP, and the train station guy was banging on the doors to get back in, and kept screaming train station. The police arrived and take him away. Turns out the guy was wanted by law enforcement in 3 different cities, and 4 provinces. He broke out of a mental hospital, and he also had some zap straps, and was gonna kill someone he wrote in a bunch of books about that he was gonna do that. And P.S. my town is in BC, Canada. We both ended up getting jobs at the McDonald's. Okay, so me and my friends Marcus, Matt, Alex, Kevin, we're all playing Xbox Live on a game called Left 4 Dead. And on the first mission, this girl joins our online game, and then she asks who's single, and I'm the only one that was at the time. Then she starts asking me weird stuff. Then she sends me nudes of herself on Xbox Live messages, and I was being cocky to her, saying I've seen better. Then she sends more to me, and it started to creep me out about it, cause all the nudes she kept sending me. The next part really creeps me out. She goes on about wanting to have kids, and she has frozen her eggs when she was 17. She's 24 or 25. Then she says over voice chat that she wants me to go to the hospital and send her my sperm to the hospital. And I was like, what the fuck? This is fucking nuts. I said to her, and she kept talking to me as if I was her boyfriend or husband, like I've never met her until I had a kid with another girl. And she was keeping a secret that she has another boyfriend, and he was smacking my kid around. For that guy's safety, the cops took me to the hospital. And then when I was up there, I met the crazy girl from the Xbox Live Left 4 Dead. Then she's like, it's you. And she wanted to have sex. She was very weird. I ended up seeing her once I got out. She comes to my place, which is weird because I've never told her where I lived, or what city I'm from.
Hey Whisperers, thank you all for listening. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can know when I upload next video. Big thanks to GenSen for being a part of my video. Feel free to send me your stories at horrorwhispers@gmail.com. You can also visit my Discord server and get in touch with other horror lovers. There is also Patreon if you wanna get some unique perks. Stay safe out there. Huge thanks to Stacy Scotty for becoming a member of my Patreon, and huge thanks to 34 for the donations.